don't think about that.
Moving from one thing to the next is actually far more
Why
natural.
was I doing this for the longest time? Greetings from Chicagoland. Welcome to Munira's Musings. Our guest today is Carol Podell. Did I say that right?
You sure did. Carol Podell.
Carol Podell. And she is a amazing storyteller and a coach. And she likes talking to people just like I do. So welcome to the show, Carol.
Thank you so much. I'm great. I'm really great. Thank you. How are you?
I am good. So Munira's Musings is a podcast where one story can change the way you see the world. And this is something that I love doing. I've been doing this for almost 8 years. Every episode that I've had to sit down with a wonderful person and talk about their journey, which opens a lot of doors for the entrepreneurs that listen. It's an insight to growth, or sometimes just to a fresh perspective. As you listen, ladies and gentlemen, think about the people that would really be enticed with this episode, and then share it with them. Without further ado, let's talk to Carol. Carol, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I love your commitment to this show also. It's just 9 years is amazing. It's just wonderful. It's a real testament to your commitment to the entrepreneur and learning, which is, I'm big on that, frankly. As I said, I'm Carol Podell. I'm a personal and professional life coach, ultimately with a focus on life transition strategist is what I do, which is, so basically I help women who are going through a major life transition, whether that's personal, professional, entrepreneurs, divorce, change of life, stay-at-home mom going back to work, or just trying to figure out that next chapter. And I help them do it with intention and joy rather than like a crisis. Often we make those pivots with crisis, or from, a spiritual awakening that usually starts from a crisis. My background is pretty diverse in that I'm born and raised in New York. I started as an actress and a singer, and then as a kid, and then in my 20s moved behind the camera, and I was a TV news producer for ABC News. I was in a relationship that then we got married and started trying to have children, and I wasn't getting pregnant. And he fortunately at the time, but told me that he didn't want children, and it was a blow. But I was in my 30s, so it was like mid-30s at that point. And I looked around, and I had this successful career, and I was in this marriage, and I lived in New York City, and I had this very sort of sexy outside looking life, and suddenly nothing supported what I wanted. And my life was not what I wanted. And initially I started with it in a crisis, but I started making changes, and I realized that, working in television was not actually supporting me. It was not what I wanted to be doing. It wasn't supporting that I really wanted a baby, and I was having trouble having one. So I went about changing my life. I got into finance. I transitioned into as a vice president of finance in running administration and facilities. I started trying to have a baby. I dated half of Manhattan, trying to find my husband. I couldn't find somebody who I wanted to have a baby with. So I decided to have a baby on my own. So I'm a very proud single mom by choice. And then that was during the full course of 12 years, 4 years of that, I spent on fertility, trying to have her, really struggling. Fortunately, now I have a beautiful 6-year-old. And many other, pivots that I had to make over time. And as I started, you make that one decision, you make that one moment where you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. and embrace it, and then you start making new decisions. I'm like a professional people pleaser. And so my life at the time was very much what other people thought looked good, And as soon as I made a choice that was my own, I was like, oh, I like this. That was for me entirely. Not selfishly, but just something that was fully what I wanted to do. I was able to move through into other choices, random or strategic. I ran a marathon. I'd never run before, pardon me. And at a point, I started realizing that there was a pattern in what I was doing and how I was doing it, and how to pivot successfully without a crisis, without, that first moment where your whole life falls apart when your husband tells you he doesn't want children and he wants to leave the marriage. So you start really being able to strategically and intentionally change your life the way you want. And I do this with women specifically because, women, we pause in life, whether we have children or not, but there's a lot of, even in our just menstrual cycle, menopause, there's all these moments of pause within our lives. And we're not really taught how to do it. We're taught to just stay in it and try to keep going in the direction that we're going and do what we're doing. And I think that it doesn't have to be that way. I know it doesn't have to be that way. That's what I help my clients with as well, is how to pivot. And, for entrepreneurship, especially, it's not an easy move, but for entrepreneurship, you really need to be able to be fluid around your movement, because the market is changing, your personal life is changing. And that's basically what I do. Long, short.
So that's an amazing introduction. But let me ask you this, right?
Yes.
You have this glamorous life behind the camera, and you are in front of thousands of people who are listening to you in New York City and in the surrounding areas. How hard was that to leave behind?
The truth is that it was all hard. It was hard in that it looked good, but it wasn't hard in that I was desperate at the time. I wanted to build a life. I wanted to have a family. And I wanted to build a life that actually supported me, not just looked like it supported me. So the depth of how hard it was it sucked. At the time, it was like I was on the floor. So my ex, basically the story of it, and as a storyteller, as a public speaker, as a podcast host, my story of it is, we'd been together for 14 years, and then he said he didn't want children. And I said, okay. And he said, okay, what? And I said, okay, you can go. And he left. And that wasn't a moment of I am woman, hear me roar. I was on the floor. It was devastating. But it was so kind of losing everything, that bottom, that it was liberating, because I no longer needed to worry about what other people thought, or the sexiness or the presentation of it. Caretaking, I love taking care of people, but you have to take care of yourself first. And I don't mean that even in a selfish way. A lot of us don't even know what that looks like. But it's 1 foot at a time, one step at a time, small pieces of caretaking, of saying, is this serving me? Is this not serving me? And what does it look like if it does serve me? It does. You don't have to blow up your life to do it, but you need to know, you need to look inside.
Right. And that's something that we most of us, in men and women both, we don't think about that.
Yes.
There are things that we hold on to that don't serve us anymore.
Yes.
And we keep thinking this is it, but it's not. You should let it go. I totally hear you, because I've gone through the same things.
Yeah.
And it's really that. I think it's the part of the decision that you make right at the point, And that's when you feel liberated, because you feel all of the weight on your shoulders been dropped off. It just is a natural process, and you feel that you're breathing a little bit easier.
Yes.
I don't know how to explain it, but anybody who's listening can hear that sigh of relief, or they felt it and they think, why was I doing this for the longest time? I don't understand. So that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Now that you are a storyteller, how did you transition into a storyteller? Was this something that you brought into your from your career? How does that work?
It's kind of a combination, I mean, fortunately, we don't, even if we transition, even if we pivot, even if we change our lives a lot over our lifetime, we're still bringing ourselves with us, I'm a storyteller in that I'm a podcast host of a podcast called She Takes the Lead, where we talk about life changes and life coming at you from the left and you adjusting to it. And I'm a public speaker. I think that a combination of things. I think that number one, moving from one thing to the next is actually far more natural than we think. In nature, things grow, they change, or they die. Like, that's the movement of it. So it's really us as human beings, because our brain is wired to habitualize things. That is what our system is. That's why when change comes, it feels like an attack almost, because it's scary, because your body has only the capacity of making a certain number of changes in a day, So when you change that or require your body to make a different decision, you're actually starting to exhaust it. So it starts to put it into a state of habit. And so but it's a muscle. It's a muscle of internal. It's an internal muscle that to get yourself to make those changes. I believe in people. I believe in community and support. So I have I have a tribe. That's an acronym for what I have, what I call it. And it's basically a strategic, like, you're building a strategic community of people who support you, your peers, and then your mentors. And I don't mean in a fake way. I mean in a very, like, the people that are connected to you, so that over time I can move and change, and I have the support around me if I'm having a bad day, because I'm human and I have lots of bad days, that keep me accountable, who I can go to and say, I'm having a bad day, but this is what I'm trying to do. Can I, can you help me figure out this problem? And over time, building that in different areas of your life, whether that's, like having a baby and having that kind of support, or, when I decided I wanted to become a storyteller, when I decided I wanted to start my podcast, I called my best friend and was like, I think it's important. I want to start a podcast. I was fully working in finance, and happily, I had a lot going on at home, because I also take care of my parents who are in their 80s and they live in the building. But I didn't have something for myself that was really giving me the opportunity to help, And I called her and I said, I think I want to start a podcast. She doesn't know anything about podcasts. I mean, she listens to them, but she was like, have you ever listened to a podcast? I was like, yes, I have. And she was like, great, that sounds amazing. Then what do you need to do to move forward? Now, the reason why having those relationships are so important is because had I said, no, I've never listened to a podcast and I still want to start a podcast, she probably would have said something differently, because she's honest with me,
Right.
And that piece, having those people, having the tribe, that you can connect with and check in with and be accountable to and be accountable for, because you need to be a tribes person as much as you need to have the tribe. That is what makes things move forward. That's how I continue to grow and change my trajectory as I need to. And that's how I teach others to do it, is to build these supports inside. So on the good days you fly, and on the bad days you still move,
Right. So, this is something that this is a podcast we talk about entrepreneurship and niches and everything else, and you've
Yes.
obviously found yours.
Yes.
Now, when you are working with women and you are working with all of these people, wonderful people out there who sometimes maybe feel stuck or whatever, what do you think? What do you see very commonly occur in all of the people that you've worked with and that need a little push so that they can go forward in life? What is that one thing that all of us women harbor?
I think it's funny. And it's for men as well. I just happen to work with women, but, especially the more high achieving you are, the more you're thoughtful around what you're doing, the harder it is to move forward in a lot of ways. Because as soon as you have an idea, like I can still have an idea to do something new and then find probably 10 different holes that I can poke within the idea in a heartbeat. But you can't
talk yourself out of it, right?
Yes, completely. You can't grow from there. So one of the first things that I do is, it's a combination of like, I'm very practical in my practices. And then I also do believe in a strong mindset shift. So it's really like, you need to sit down and figure out what you want to do, which is some soul searching, and then try it, and move forward and take a step. And, and with your tribe, again, there are certain exercises to do. I have a process of understanding your value system, I think is important, because once you know your sort of value system, I don't mean ethically or morally, I just mean like, once you figure out what is aligned, it's a lot easier to understand how to move forward. And so with clients, especially, no matter what we're doing, no matter what I'm talking about, we're always making sure that we start with the value system so that we understand, I believe we have 3 to 5 values that we live by all the time. And they can shift order, but they're pretty much serving that. One of them for me is community, is family. And it's inconvenient a lot, but it is one of the things that makes me, it's something that's ever present. And so once you've found that, you can then do check-ins about, okay, well, I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to buy a franchise, or I want to, I want to create an online membership to teach people how to draw, is the setup of that in your values? Is it set up for you to have a community? Yes. Is a franchise going to do that? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, what is your values? And then what is the choice around that? Is it aligned? And then taking small steps, making a phone call to somebody, reaching out, doing research. Like it's one step at a time. But building in the habits over and over and over again that trick your brain to do them anyway.
Right.
Because
you like you said, you would find something, 10 things to poke holes into, right? So
yes.
That's something that every person I know does. I do it myself. Like, you have this idea and say, oh, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources. Where would I go find this information? What I want to tell everybody listening is that if you don't have a community, start with the one person that you have who is a shoulder to lean on. That's the first thing. And if not, then there is so much information in the information. We live in the information age right now.
For sure.
There is so much out there. Go look at other people's stories, if you will, and see how they started. Because they started at the bottom. I mean, they are there up to the top. They didn't just get there. They didn't just fly up to the top unless you are very rich and you have resources.
Right.
But everybody else did have to start at the bottom, and you're still there if you don't keep pushing yourself. If you keep pushing yourself,
it's also hard, I think, when you've been successful in one area to then say, I'm not happy. I know I'm successful, but I'm not happy. and I want to try something new. And in your mind, because you started that one thing at the bottom, to say, I'm going to go to the bottom of that and start, it's not true. Like, yes, you may be new in that area, but you're bringing all of this other stuff. This is what I work with is I have a program I have that's structured in different steps, and in that, so that you can take your transferable skills and actually serve people. You can, understand who your tribe is in that, develop who the people are that are gonna help you and teach you and move you. You can make the decisions around it and take small steps. Like the program that I teach it's holistic and cyclical. So like each thing that I work with supports the next. And then something I call relentless optimism, which is not being happy all the time, is then you relentlessly, every situation you're in, you optimize. You do the best in the situation that you are in, and that inevitably gets you through anything. If you are always, and this is not an easy statement to it's not easy in practice, but if you're looking into your universe, if you're looking into this career, if you're looking into your personal change, and it sucks, and you're like, oh my God, this is so hard. This is really, I'm not going to make it. If you can shift your mindset just a little bit into understanding, okay, what is the best I can get out of this situation? It's not going to be perfect, but the best, you can get far just with that. If your listeners get anything else, relentless optimism, if you can think of that and keep that present in your mind of trying to optimize every situation that you're in, it will change your life. It will change your life.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed that, especially women, instead and talking ourselves out of it, we always look at it in the negative way. Why me? Or what if it doesn't work? Things like that, right?
Yeah.
So one thing, and what's your advice for the women who do it that way, and how do they change that mind shift?
It's a great question. It's a hard one. I think the why me needs to say, I think, and if you haven't found one, I mean, seriously, DM me, I'll be it. Everybody needs one person. They need a bestie that will tell them the truth, And I don't mean like a bestie, like they need someone who's going to be transparent and have a transparent relationship with you, where they will, with love and kindness, call you out. And I don't mean a friend. I say bestie, but I mean, that can be a work bestie. That can be somebody that you're in an accountability pod with. That can be somebody that you found online, just somebody. I believe that having somebody that is if you can seek that person out and tell them the truth, the hardest thing in the world is to tell yourself the truth. The second hardest thing in the world is to share that truth with another human being.
Right. But
if you can do that, you can succeed, because because by the time you get to that point, you've told yourself the truth, so you can go and talk to somebody else. And that really, I mean, there's so many, it's, but that piece is such a big piece of movement. I really believe, especially when you're an entrepreneur, because you're alone most of the time and you're just shouting into the abyss. But it doesn't have to be somebody like directly in your universe, but ideally, if you have people in your universe that can help lift you up when you are not lifted, when you're not feeling that, when you're talking yourself out of it, you can say to this person, okay, I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong. I did this the other day. I had an idea for something and I wasn't sure. And I was like, and most of the people that I know would not be able to understand what I'm doing, like the thought around it. And I knew they were going to give me the safe answer, not the answer that I wanted, but just the safe answer. I had one person that I called who's a colleague who I've never even met in person. Like we've Zoomed. And I said, okay, here's my idea. And I want you to sit down and poke all the holes in it. I want you to sit and tell me every single hole that's in it, because I'm poking the holes in it and I want to hear what your holes are. And then after that, I want you to tell me, I want to talk about it, and I want to talk through the holes.
Right.
So that I can then turn the holes, I can fill those holes, or realize that it is filled with holes. You know, because sometimes, yes, you're right, it's filled with holes. Let's find something else. I need to work it out. But that conversation, that piece is really it's a game changer. It's a game changer, you know?
So that makes sense. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. So, Carol, where do people find you?
Oh, well, I'm all over the internet. You can go to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and LinkedIn at Carol Podell. That's my name. CarolePodell. You can also catch my podcast, She Takes the Lead, on YouTube at She Takes the Lead Podcast. My website, carolpodell.com, or anywhere where you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, whatever. She Takes the Lead.
This has been such a wonderful conversation, because it's not only just niches that we talked about. We talked about how to poke holes in an idea and how to then understand where you want to go with this idea that you have. Are you stuck? Do you feel that there's something more out there for you and you're holding yourself back? Because that's, as women, we do that a lot, right? So Carol knows that. I've done that. And then the decisions we make, sometimes these are just amazing, that you have this idea, but you don't know where to take that. You know, I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about. Maybe a fresh idea, a little encouragement, or just a new way of looking at the world. If it did, why don't pass it along with a friend and keep the conversation going? And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, be sure to subscribe to our channels wherever you find your podcast, so the next one will find its way to you. Thank you for spending this time with us. Until next time, thank you, Carol, for being on my show. I appreciate it. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week with a new guest. Thanks, Carol.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.